So, welcome back to Automotive Tales. On today's episode, we're going to have a play with a BMW F20. So you might recognise this particular one from a previous Tall Tales video. So this is Dave's M140i, but it has a small problem. So we're going to talk through some of the issues you might find with the exhaust systems on these. Just about to get my finger in shot. Here we go. And some of the options for fixing it. So, first of all, we're going to run a video of what the problem is. So, as you'd hopefully heard on the previous bit of video, you get quite a nasty little rattle as the car starts up. And that is all to do with the flaps in the exhaust. So, we're going to put the car up on ramps, as you can see here, and have a look at what's going on and see if we can figure out what the problem is. There's a number of things that could be at fault. We've got a selection of parts, and worst case scenario is we're going to just change the exhaust. So, let's get the car up on ramps, have a look at what we're working with. So hopefully you can see on the camera, we're now underneath the car. This is the single pipe coming in from the turbo to the back box. You've got two exits, and then on this side you have this little fella. So this is a little actuator that's connected to a valve in the exhaust that opens and closes depending on what mode you are in. And you can see it's connected with the spring here. So I'll put a little insert of what that looks like. So one of the most common causes for the exhaust rattle is actually this spring failing. However, we can see here that actually there's nothing wrong with that spring on this particular car. So that's not the cause of the problem. Most likely the valve in here is seized or the spindle is damaged, and that's causing the valve to fluctuate backwards and forwards, and that's what's causing the rattle. So what we're going to do is remove the exhaust, and we're going to fit some nice fancy new bits. Now if you go to the dealer and you get a replacement part for this, you're paying for an entire exhaust system. The reason being, there is no join anywhere on that system all the way up through the resonator box, the mid silencer, right up to the catalytic converter. So to fix this problem with a standard exhaust system from BMW, you are replacing the entire system. So one of the options to replace it is to fit the M Performance exhaust, and that's what we've decided to do. So let's have a look at that and walk through the kit and show you how we're going to do it. So we have a box of shiny new parts. What you'll see here is an exhaust system. So it's another twin pipe system. This is the BMW M Performance exhaust. It's a factory part. And coming with that kit, we've got two nice exhaust tips, which we'll get out and show you in a second. This is the clip I was talking about earlier. So we've got that as a spare in case it was the clip that's broken, but it's not. So we aren't going to use that today. We also have this little device here, which is a little dummy part that basically blanks off the actuator that's underneath the car that's connected to the standard exhaust. And quite handily, they also provide you with this, which is a little clamp for putting the two sections of the exhaust together, which you can actually use, I believe, if you want to put the original exhaust back on. So as you'll see in a minute, we have to cut the original exhaust to fit the M Performance back box. So if you want to go back to the original exhaust, you have to then sheath it back on and clamp it back together. So that's what that can be used for as well. So now we're going to walk you through the process of taking the exhaust system off and fitting the new one. And then we'll have a listen to see what it sounds like. As a minor correction, there's actually a separate one for fitting it. The bracket I showed you before is actually just for refitting the standard exhaust. So you don't even need to open that. That's quite a nice little extra they throw in. So as you can see, that is much shorter, so we're going to have to find out where to cut it. Now, you can get the set of instructions for this which tells you exactly where, and there's a few variants on that, so I'm going to grab the instructions out and we're going to walk through it. So, as you can see, the first bit of the instructions is to locate where to cut the exhaust. So handily, they do give you a little indent in the exhaust as a starting point, and then give you some dimensions for where to cut from that. So we're dealing with an F20 today, so 7.9 millimeters forward from that dimple in the car. Now, when I was under earlier, I did spot that, so we'll go under, I'll show you that, and then we'll make our measurements, mark up and get ready to cut. Obviously, if you're doing an F22, F23, there are different distances. But also some of the cars that don't have that dimple, they do provide you with a little sort of Blue Peter-esque cut and stick piece of paper, which is on the back of this set of instructions, which you can put on top of the exhaust, and it shows you where to cut. I'll show you that later on, or I'll do a cutaway and go to that at some point. But for now, we're going to go into the car, find that dimple, do the measurement and mark up the exhaust, ready to cut it. Okay, so we are back underneath the car, and I've highlighted the little dimple in the exhaust system for you. So we've got a little dot just here. We need to measure 7.9 millimeters, which is a very, very precise measurement. So we've got the verniers out. We're going to rest the vernier in the dimple and measure 7.9 and mark the exhaust up. So I'm going to have to do that off camera because I can't get the tripod under here. So here goes. So I look like a mentalist, but safety first, because we are going to use an angle grinder. Voila, so we've got ourselves a nice batch pad one, which makes this job an awful lot easier. So we've marked up the exhaust, and we're just going to chop through the pipe, which seems a bit criminal because it's not very old, but that's how it's done. So you can see we marked it up. The 7.9 millimeters is very exact. We've got it as close as we possibly can to this edge of the tape. I've wrapped the tape round to give me a bit of a guide as I'm moving around with the cutter. So now what we're going to do is follow that line, cut through the exhaust, and then take this section off, which is the back box, and we leave the front section here, which we will clamp to here with the new M Performance exhaust. So here goes. Okay, we were successful. We managed to get the angle grinder through most of the exhaust. It's still slightly connected, as you can see here. We have got a tiny little burr holding it on, which is great, because what we're now going to do is support the exhaust system so it doesn't drop onto that cross member in the middle. And then the weight of the back box is held on some little brackets, which you can see here, and there's one on the other side. So once we've got the main exhaust system supported, we can undo these brackets, lower the exhaust system off, take off these rubber mounts to go onto the new ones, probably clean and paint those because they're looking a bit grotty, and start to reinstall. So let's get the jack out. Okay, so one last thing to do before we drop the exhaust with these 13s here, one on each side, is we have to disconnect this wiring here. So when the exhaust drops, it doesn't pull on this wiring, which should just be a little clip. There you go. Right. Impact gun on these 13s. You can see we've already soaked them with a bit of penetrating fluid, and the exhaust should be off. Okay, so that's the exhaust off. This is the old box. Ignore that. So you can now see the little valve and the system, and this is the little actuator that plugs into the wiring loom. So this is the cause of all of the rattling noise and all of the frustration. So you can also see where we've cut through. It's about as straight as you can get from underneath the car. You can see quite a few burrs, so we're going to deburr the pipe on the car, but also this one as well, so it can be stored to go back on the car in future if necessary. We're going to strip off the mounts on both sides because we can reuse these. As I said before, I think we're going to give these a clean because you can see the corrosion already starting to set in. So I'll attack those with a wire brush, get them back to bare metal, hit them with some red oxide and some black top coat to make sure those don't corrode in future. Then we can start fitting the new exhaust. As you can see, even the standard exhaust comes with these nice little tips on here which have faded a bit. As Dave pointed out, you can actually get replacements of these now from what's the company called? Cobra Sport?
Cobra Sport.
So that's pretty cool. So if you wanted to just zhuzh up your existing exhaust, you can actually replace these tips, which is quite neat. As you can see, there's nothing actually wrong with the rest of the box itself. As the fix to this valve problem is to replace the system, it seems mad when there's, I mean, that's an almost new box. So worth keeping these as a spare if you can live with the rattle as a last resort. In fact, if I get the camera just right, you can just about see that little spring in there, which is still in one piece on this car. So obviously the problem is with the valve itself rather than the spring having failed. So let's get all those bits deburred, get some paint on these exhaust mounts, and then start putting it back together. So this is the little device that plugs into the wiring loom. So you can see the plug and the pin there. And instead of being an actuator, it's just got a little, what looks like a resistor that must short the pins. And that must trick the car into thinking the actuator is still plugged in. I presume if you don't do that, you'll end up with an error message. So we'll go plug that in before we start reassembling the exhaust. Okay, so to fit this clip, connect it into the wiring loom, like so. There isn't anywhere to mount it, or it does come with a little Christmas tree connector on the back. As per the instructions, you need to find a place to locate it and make a hole to mount it. What it doesn't tell you, you need about a 7mm hole. I think you can get away with an 8mm hole, but you literally find a place, locate it, push it in, tucks it out of the way. That's it. It's the electrics bit done. So voila, this is the new exhaust. So this is the M Performance kit. It's a proper BMW part. You can see it's not got the tips on at the moment, but that's fine. We don't want to damage those while we're fitting it. And you can see where they've swaged the pipe out here to slide over the original exhaust, and there's a nice clamp already fitted. At first glance, we were a bit concerned that we've maybe cut off too much of the pipe and that wouldn't meet, because they look like they stop in a similar place, until we actually measured it and realised this kink here actually pushes the whole pipe back this way. So although it's at the same point in the curve, there is going to be enough of the pipe to go into where that's swaged out there. So we're just waiting for the paint to dry on the brackets that will hold the exhaust on, these bits here. These are the brackets for the exhaust mounts. So we have cleaned the rust off, added some cure rust and some red oxide. We'll get a coat of black before it all goes back on, so there's no more corrosion on those. So as soon as that's painted, we'll be putting it all back together. I think we might have found the source of the problem, potentially corrosion inside the valve as a result of a lot of water sitting in the box. No idea how we're going to get that out, but we may need to try and dry that out before we store this as a spare part for the car. Interesting. So the exhaust is ready to go in. We've got it on the roller so we can slide it underneath without scratching it, because it's got the nice M Performance logo on the bottom. So hangers are on, hangers are painted. The idea is, if this is the right way around, is that that will go in there. So we'll install those first, then offer it up, bolt it up and clamp it on. Okay, so the new pipes are on. We had a little bit of fiddling around just getting it to sit level. We actually added a washer to this side behind the exhaust mount bracket just to get it to level out. It wasn't sitting just quite so. But you can see it's all connected in now. It's got a nice little V-band connection to the original exhaust, which I probably just need to nip up a little bit further. But the nice little touch is, from behind the car, you can just make out the M Performance logo, which is quite neat. Okay, so finishing touches are these lovely little M monikered chrome tips. which are dead easy to fit. So they've got a 3mm Allen key on the underside of here, so you get it nice and straight to where you want it, forward and backwards, and just tighten up the Allen key. You might just be able to make out a little dimple in there that just impresses in the bottom of the pipe. You want to make sure there's a little bit of a dimple, just means that that's not going to come loose or move, that's fairly secure. And that's it. So now for the all important bit, let's see what it sounds like.